Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I always love standing on these stages because it always makes me realize how those entrepreneurs feel when they're pitching on the other side of the fence. So forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous because I feel a bit like them this morning. What I thought I'd do is maybe just give you a quick highlight on my own background. I'm principally somebody who's spent most of his business life investing in businesses. So what you see in Dragon's Den is quite similar to the kind of real life background. My career essentially started when I launched a business called Alexander Mann. And interestingly enough, when I launched Alexander Mann, the theme for me there was recognizing at the time there was an unmet need within the market where the concept of headhunting in the mid-80s only really existed at the top end of the market. So headhunters typically only place chief executives. And I, as a young 20-year-old, thought, why wouldn't organizations use headhunters at the mid-range level, at senior management positions, which actually, believe it or not, had never been done before. And when you look at the kind of macroeconomics of that, the top end represents maybe 2% of the market, and the mid-range probably represents 30% of the market, which actually didn't exist. Today, that sector generates something like £2 billion a year in fees, which didn't even exist. So the concept of launching Alexander Mann was recognizing a gap, identifying that gap, and essentially creating a business that served that need. Having built Alexander Mann, which was principally a UK business, I then asked myself the question, would that model work outside of the United Kingdom? And launched a second brand called Humana International from scratch and as an idea, and tried to replicate the Alexander Mann success story across the world. And we successfully opened 147 offices in 30 countries, replicating the model time and time again, and then successfully sold the Humana International business and also the Alexander Mann business. That gave me an opportunity really to kind of reflect on the concept of essentially starting businesses from scratch and thought the real guys that make money are these big private equity boys, and maybe I ought to get into a little bit of that market, and launched a business called Hamilton Bradshaw, which was really my private equity firm, and started looking to acquire businesses rather than starting them up, because as you know, a startup can take anywhere between 5 to 10 years. And 4 years ago, launched a business called Hamilton Bradshaw Human Capital, and in the last 4 years have successfully managed to grow that into one of the top 50 staffing businesses in the world now. And throughout that kind of theme of my business background, the one key thing I've learned time and time again, which is quite consistent throughout every business in every sector, which is businesses is really about people. So every business, and today I've got a portfolio of just over 41 businesses, the success and failure of businesses typically comes from people. Although people say the market's great, the product's fantastic, the pricing's great, but actually I've recognized that all those things, if put with the wrong management, still the business doesn't work. So actually people are what drive businesses. And for me, the key theme of that is almost recognizing that if you back the right business that's led by people with passion, with conviction, there lies the story. And I think the opportunity when presented to me to invest in the financial services sector, I applied pretty much every fundamental principle that I'd learned over the last 25 years, where is there a market need? And I recognize that certainly in the financial services industry over the last few years, the industry clearly has had a lot of challenges, whether it's been the credit crisis and the impact of that into pensions and returns. And I thought that there was an opportunity here where the consumer had potentially been slightly overlooked. And when I met Spike Hughes, who presented to me an opportunity to create a business like InSynergy, I recognized that actually there is a niche in the market for an organization that can focus on some of those unique opportunities. And looking at some of the opportunities that he presented to me, recognizing that currently in the kind of Western economy, some of the performances have not been stellar. And I think longer term, when you look at the impact that will have to our consumers, it's quite challenging. And the idea of focusing on international markets like a China or an India, certainly for me as an investor myself, if I took a longer term play, 5, 10, 15 years, I happen to believe absolutely passionately the dynamics of the global economy will change. I think the dominance that the West has had over the last 20 odd years, I think rightly or wrongly, you will see a shift, and a shift essentially to the Eastern economy. And if you look at Maddie's exceptional presentation, and just standing listening to the impact of what India is doing, you've just got to take that view 3 to 5 years ahead. And actually, I don't know one Western economy that could even scratch the surface of that sort of potential growth. And I think sometimes if you are investing and you're looking, to represent your clients, there has to be that leap of faith, because if all you do is wait till everybody else piles in, you have clearly missed the opportunity. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in business is always observe the masses and do the opposite. Because if all you do is follow everybody else, you have clearly missed the boat. And I think if I look at the impact of some of those numbers, I happen to believe that Madhu's right. The performance over the last 10 or 15 years actually was the beginning of the journey, not the end of the journey. I actually genuinely believe the best is yet to come, because the impact of the investments they're looking to make have actually not yielded yet. If you're going to invest in any economy $1 trillion, what impact economically will that create? So certainly I think as an entrepreneur, as an investor, I absolutely truly buy into some of that story. I think going forward, that there's still, and I think you'll probably agree, over the last few months, we do, in Britain, we do love to dwell on, the past, and we do love to continuously whinge and whine about what happened yesterday. And even if you look at bankers' bonuses, there ought to come a point where we should draw the line in the sand and say, what's happened has happened. How do we build on this moving forward? And I think, to me right now, if you look ahead, there are absolutely, in my mind, for people who are smart out there, people who understand what they're doing, there are genuinely some amazing opportunities. The last 2 years for Hamilton Bradshaw has probably been the best period we've ever enjoyed, because the principle to me of investing is the whole idea on how you make money is you kind of buy low and you sell high. And, I think whether you're Warren Buffett or Madhu Keller, you know what, it hasn't changed. And if you take it from a very simplistic perspective, if you had to take a guess, where are you in the cycle? You certainly are not at the top of the cycle, so you have to be hovering around somewhere at the bottom. If you're somewhere around the bottom of the cycle, are you buying or are you selling? You must be buying. So what have I been doing for the last 2 years? I've been investing, and actually very aggressively investing, because I took a very pragmatic view, which was very simply to ask myself the question, do I believe the world is about to end? And I thought, actually, you know what, I don't think so. I think the economy generally goes up, it goes down, it cycles. I think we're kind of at the bottom of that cycle. If I believe that the economy will bounce, which I absolutely believe it will, I have no doubt in my mind that you will see over the next 12 to maybe 24 months, the markets will start to rise again. Even if you look at the stock market over the last few months, there are clear indicators to me that we are going to see a bounce and a recovery in the market. And therefore, if you're not investing, you are clearly missing out. And for me, the last 2 years, whether it was real estate, whether it was private equity, whether it was the stock market, I was absolutely fully invested. And the crazy thing is, the number of people who said to me, you must be crazy. This is not the time to be investing. This is the time to be being prudent and hold back. And I go back to, 25 years ago. The principle is you buy low and you sell high. And to me, in the economy generally, some of the investments that I've made, if I'm really honest with you, I didn't understand the valuations. They were just too low, because sometimes in kind of businesses, valuations are driven by sentiment more than fundamentals. And if nobody else is investing, that price will come down. And to me, it was quite interesting. A few years ago, I was at Harvard Business School, where I left school at 16, didn't have any qualifications, and looked back on my life, and I thought, if I had my chance to do something again, what would I do? And I thought maybe going to school might be a smart thing to do. And at Harvard, they gave me the opportunity of meeting some very bright people. And one of the people they invited in one day was Warren Buffett. And, of course, all the students were in awe of meeting Warren, and we all clearly had the same question. So tell me, Warren, what is it that you do that makes you the world's most, renowned investor? And every time I've met really smart people, really amazing people, the message, for some amazing reason, is always simple. There's never that much complexity to success. And, he said, James, you're probably going to be disappointed with my answer. But he said, I just invest in the things that are so obvious. every month for the last 40 years, I pop into Walmart on a Saturday. I just want to know, what are people buying? And if you look at my stock portfolio, there are such obvious names in there. The difference is I'm not a trader, I'm an investor. I buy something, I believe in it, I believe in the stock, and I hang on. When I've made a fair return, and the thing I probably learnt the most from him is the question of when do you get in and when do you get out? And he said that's probably the bit where economically you have to be very smart. And he said, I've always taken a view that the time to get out is when the price is at a point I wouldn't pay. So if my stock I'm holding reaches a level that as a buyer I wouldn't buy that, there's a message I should get out. And if I go in at a stock level, generally it's when everybody else is bailing out. So if I see the core fundamentals make sense to me, I believe in the brand, I believe in the concept, and the market, clearly the sentiment is driven, I'm in. And he took me through 5 or 6 names, whether it was Gillette or, American Express, and, the obvious kind of names. And you look at his success, and actually, he was talking at the time when I was there, the technology bubble, it was going crazy. And he said, I've been criticized time and time again because I've missed out on this huge opportunity. And he said, I've missed out because I don't understand it. And I think the key thing is if you don't understand something, don't follow the herd. And he probably was the classic example of my theory, observe the masses and do the opposite. So when everybody else piled in, he thought clearly, the herd mentality is not going to be sustainable. And actually, history has proved, was very smart. So I think in conclusion, to me, business fundamentally, my own kind of experience of that journey has really been recognizing that what is the key driver that drives success in business. And I think when at Insynergy, when I invested in that business, the clear thing for me was having a management team that I believed that had the background, the experience, but most important, the ability to deliver the need for the clients. And I think identifying people like Chris Minodi, Madhu Keller, people in China, I think has proved to me that if you can work with some of the best people in the world, clearly you have every opportunity of seeing that through and delivering on some of that success. I think the theme today has clearly been very much about you have to think outside the box. These are very difficult times. These are very challenging times. And I think the responsibility that we have representing the interest of our clients, convention right now isn't working. And unless, as I think, individuals, you're able to see or think outside the box and find some of those niche opportunities that will make a difference to the returns that you're responsible for recommending or advising to your clients, I think that's where you're going to clearly see some of the value. I think today, just listening and going through some of the agenda and the messages that certainly that I've taken out, there is an opportunity out there. I think last couple of years have been quite difficult, but I think we need to start to kind of believe in ourselves, believe in the market, and recognize that whenever there are difficult times, the masses tend to fall by the wayside. People who are strong, who are confident, who kind of believe in the fundamental principles of what you represent as an industry, I do think that 2011 and I think 2012 will be very attractive in my opinion. I go against the grain because I know the media's view is a bit controversial in terms of where they see it, but I think the sentiment, and I've got a number of businesses in a whole variety of sectors, I am definitely starting to see a little bit of a trickle heading in the right direction. And I do think, genuinely speaking, when I look back over the last 2-3 years, whilst it's been quite difficult, the signs to me are reasonably positive. I think from a UK perspective, I'm a strong believer that I think the Olympics will have quite a positive sentimental impact on our economy, certainly in the southeast. So actually, I don't think it's doom and gloom out there. I think you can be more optimistic. I think you can be more positive. And I think if you are out there showing some of that enthusiasm, I do think people will follow. And I think Britain generally, unfortunately, we are a nation where we like to always think the glass is half full. I think before I wrap, I just really wanted to thank Madhu, because I recognise that, taking the time of somebody of his calibre to fly out to address the audience today, certainly from my point of view, was a very inspiring and very enjoyable presentation. Also wanted to thank some of the other parties today in terms of represented and presented to you. I think it's been extremely valuable and quite useful. And let's hope we can take some of that wisdom and go out there and do what we do very well, which is to address the needs of our clients. Thank you very much indeed.